Good morning or afternoon, everyone. I hope the day is treating you well. Welcome to a brief webinar on chemical versus UVC light disinfectants and how these can be leveraged in sanitizing mobile devices effectively. My name is Taylor Mann. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CleanSlate UV. And I'm joined today by our Director of Clinical Research, Dr. Carolina Koutras. And we're going to be speaking about not only who we are and why we're here talking to you today, but about the trends in mobile device usage, how this how facilities are actually trying to tackle this, and what the different some of the main differences between chemical disinfectants and an introduction to UVC light for the audience today. So without any further ado, we're going to get started. One thing I do just want to note is that we will have a Q&A at the end of the session. As I already noted, there are going to be a few poll questions throughout that you're feel free to participate in on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you have any questions as we go through, please just put those into the chat box in real time, and then we're going to leave 5 to 7 minutes at the end to try and go through as many questions as we can. So without further ado, we will get started. So first and foremost, why are we here talking today, and why am I talking to you today? CleanSlate UV is a mobile device hygiene company, and our mission is to create simple, effective, and proven solutions for eliminating pathogens on mobile devices. Our product has been on market since 2018, and we're now deployed in over 300 hospital systems across the globe, over 1,000 installs now across 300 health systems, as well as a wide range of non-hospital applications, from transportation to retail, to hospitality, to logistics and pharmaceutical. Device hygiene is not something that is a challenge only for one industry, nor is it limited to a single geography. And as a company, we're focused on becoming the global leader in device hygiene. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, or starting to talk about, is devices and the fact that they are everywhere across almost every industry that we may be working in now, from healthcare and checking in at the entrance to a hospital, going through to actually doing quality control and audits in a food processing plant, to actually all the barcode scanners that are used throughout warehousing facility and logistics centers. Devices are everywhere, and they present a massive opportunity in terms of application level innovations being leveraged throughout enterprise environments, as well as opportunities to interact with your customers and with your visitors. Over 75% of businesses now consider mobile devices to be essential to their workflow, according to Samsung's State of Enterprise Mobility survey. And that a large part of that is staff using devices as part of their workflow. A big part of that as well is customers who may be leveraging, especially today, things like QR codes on devices, or using apps for in-store ordering, and a whole bunch of other applications. And device ownership, or the presence of devices in facilities, really sort of comes in 3 broad flavors that most people here will be aware of. The first is bring your own device, BYOD, slightly less fun than BYOB, but still quite enjoyable. What this leads to is not a lot of standardization in the make, model, or size of devices, but it's fairly easy, and there's a lot of applications now that can be put on devices to manage them very effectively. The second mainstream is facility or business issued. So these are devices that the business is buying, centrally owning, centrally deploying, and centrally managing. And then there's a hybrid approach, which is becoming increasingly prevalent, because not only do you need facility-owned devices that are application specific, so let's say a barcode scanner, but you also then want people to be able to leverage their own devices for things like email and text communication, or other applications that can be securely loaded onto a personal phone, not to mention the entire range of customer and visitor devices that are coming in and out of your doors, or consultants or third-party vendors, the entire range of folks who are using these devices. And the problem that's consistent across every single one of these environments, or every single one of those deployment patterns, is the fact that this is a third hand that we never wash. The average phone is 18 times dirtier than a public restroom. That's both the toilet seat and the toilet handle, I believe. And, you know, for a more specific example, in the healthcare environment, 10 to 50% of devices are contaminated with pathogenic bacteria. So whether that's long-term care, hospital, physician's office, and what that means is bacteria that is actively harmful and can lead to infections. And the problem here is that staff and visitors, and then in the healthcare environment, patients wash their hands. You see this whenever you go into a hotel, you go into a restaurant now, people are washing their hands. And then what do? They immediately pull out their phone and recontaminate their hands with one of the dirtiest things that they will touch all day. So there's a three-pronged challenge with this. The first is that in a BYOD environment, you need to convince employees that whatever solution you're providing to disinfect that device, or whatever solution you could provide to make sure that this third hand is being washed, that it's not going to damage their device. You need to convince them of that in order for them to use it. For facility-owned devices, you're on the hook for the impact of disinfectants. And we've seen this time and time again with facilities that will come to us and say, hey, we just had to RMA 150 iPads because of the fibers from wipes getting into the slots, or because of the impact that the disinfectant had on the oleophobic coating on the screen. And that being a challenge, that if you're investing millions of dollars into these devices, you need to figure out how do you elongate how do you not shorten their lifespan just by regularly cleaning them. And then the last problem is, it's a hybrid. You get both problems. You both have to convince people coming in that they should sanitize devices. You also have to take care of and bear the burden of the costs of consistent disinfection on your own devices. So this is where we're going to open up just a quick poll, and I want to know an honest answer from everyone, which is the question of how often do you sanitize your phone? And I'm going to put this here right now. This is a good improvement for the Demio platform, which is to allow you to preload poll questions. Okay, so you can take part in the poll on the right-hand side there. You will not be judged for saying never. It's a lot more than you think. And there you go. And I'm going to guess that a few of our team members are on the call, and I'm going to guess they're the 3 to 10 or 10 plus times a week crowd, because we drill into them how disgusting these devices are. And we're going to keep going, and we'll come back to that poll in a second. So how are a lot of facilities tackling this right now? There's three main routes. The first is that they're either just trying to ban devices outright. This is a route that is quickly being, a lot of people are abandoning this because they realize how futile it is, particularly for guests and visitors. You're basically saying, hey, don't bring a part of you into this facility or into our business, as dramatic as that sounds. Chemical wipes is kind of the default. It's okay, we're going to give them the same thing to wipe down their phone as we're using to wipe down door handles or bed handles or this, really durable medical equipment, but without really necessarily understanding whether it's the best way to do it or not. And then lastly, there's what we do in the emerging category of UVC light and how that can be leveraged here. So before I hand it over to my colleague, I want to just briefly go over a couple of the common chemical disinfectants, so we kind of zero in on what we're talking about here. We're talking about professional grade chemical disinfectants, not household Lysol wipes that'll get 99.9% kill on the common cold, but stuff that will kill really dangerous stuff that you see throughout B2B and professional environments, like C. difficile, MRSA, VRE, E. coli, foot and mouth disease, a whole range of pathogens that we've tested against. And this, common solutions here may be the SaniCloth, the Clorox Healthcare Bleach Germicidal Wipe, as well as the Cavi Wipe. And the thing that most of these have in common is that they all have a contact time of either 3 minutes hard or up to 3 minutes, between 1 and 3 minutes. And a lot of them, if you're using them consistently, you need to actually put gloves on because of how harsh they can be on both the skin and your devices. So to talk about the other side of the coin, to introduce everyone here to UVC light, if you haven't if you haven't used the technology or been introduced to it before, I'm going to invite Dr. Carolina Kutras in, our Director of Clinical Research. Carolina, do you want to say hi? And then I'll let you take it away and give an overview of UV light.
Thank you, Taylor. Hi, everyone. My name is Carolina Kutras, and I'm the Director of Clinical Research here at CleanSlate. And as Taylor mentioned, I'm going to briefly talk about device hygiene in healthcare and our technology and why it matters. As you can see in this slide, ultraviolet C is actually a well-established means of disinfection. The first documented application dates back to the 1900s in France, where it was used in drinking water facilities, and since then it's been adopted by other industries as well, including healthcare. Ultraviolet C, and we call ultraviolet germicidal irradiation, so UVGI, is essentially that portion of the electromagnetic spectrum between 200 and 280 nanometers that is absorbed by a genetic material, so DNA or RNA. And what it does, it damages the structure of DNA by just forming dimers with the timings and prevents the microorganisms from replicating. The sun will emit the full spectrum of UV as approximately 10% of sunlight. Most of it is attenuated by the ozone layer. It reaches the Earth's surface, so it protects us. The ozone layer basically is protecting our DNAs from UVC. And so UVC technologies, they usually now will involve the use of different types of UVC lamps. It works by line of sight, so the light actually must reach the surface in order for the bacteria or spores or the viruses to be deactivated. And what it can see, it cannot. What it cannot see, it will not work. It won't harm touch screens, cameras, and sensors of the electronics, unlike chemicals. And it's really optimal on hard, non-porous surfaces. It's unlikely to be 100% effective on fabrics, although the technology can actually be also optimized for other surfaces, but it does work better on the hard, non-porous surfaces. And bioburden, so think of your skin cells and fingerprint oils, they can shield the pathogens from UV light. And in fact, at CleanSlate UV, what we do is that we add soil to our test to mimic bioburden and to make our efficacy results as close to real world settings as possible. So let's just look at the practical comparison of the different types of device hygiene methods. So when we look at the chemical wipes, typically the way it works, it interacts with microorganisms, the cell walls, or the metabolism, versus UVC, which is essentially the light is absorbed by DNA or RNA and damages the structure, preventing replication. So they work in essentially different ways. The chemical wipes will be removing biomatter. So, it's just the wiping process itself. UVC, it won't do that. And it's not required to actually clean the device prior to running a UVC cycle. Although if the device is visibly soiled, we would recommend that it be wiped with a clean wipe prior to UVC, but not a requirement. And the use of wipes will require PPE, so gloves, if you're using them repeatedly, just to protect the user from the chemical exposure, while PPE is not required when using the UVC device. But the wipes, they will require typically a longer contact time. So Taylor was showing the wipes just a few minutes ago. So typically there's a 3-minute contact minimum. Some wipes to require 5 to 10 minutes, while the UVC light is a short 20-second cycle, and it doesn't require any additional time to work and be effective. But what does it mean in terms of user adoption when we are talking about these two different methods? So in the clinical settings, the phones are often used during between patient contact periods without device hygiene. And we know from the peer-reviewed scientific studies and clinical trials in healthcare that only 13 to 37% of healthcare workers actually claim to clean their phones with some frequency. So what we saw at CleanSlate and through our studies and interactions with clients is that the users, they typically just do one or the other. They typically just do hand hygiene, but they don't do device hygiene. So doing both is too complicated and not practical for them. So that really creates a problem. So as you think of these phones, they come into contact with the hands, but also the face and the region in around the mouth, and creates an opportunity for cross-contamination. It's a risk for the individual healthcare worker. It also creates a risk for the patient. Some of those are immunocompromised and have increased susceptibility to acquiring infections. And there's also a risk to the community. There is a flow of individuals to and from the hospital setting. So we wanted to create an easy and fast solution to allow those healthcare workers to combine hand hygiene with device hygiene at the same time, and hopefully also encourage more hand hygiene, which is very important in healthcare. So just next slide, please.
Actually, Caroline, before we go on, I was just going to say I think that's a really good insight as well, insofar as when you look at even expanding that outside of healthcare. And I know we've found this a lot when we talk about like when we've done our recent very large deployment with Pearson Airport, as well as the public deployment at one of Canada's largest retailers, Hudson's Bay. It's been the motivation for them was looking at, like, how do you give someone something that's going to be so easy to use that they can do it at the same time that they're sanitizing hands, right? Because you do need, as you said, you need both sides of that coin. And what we've seen pretty consistently with chemical disinfectants is that people will either just not use it, so you just don't get user adoption, or you have people coming in and they'll wash their hands and then pick up a device and start wiping it down, but they've already recontaminated their hands as part of the process. So having it as one single action, or one thing that's happening both within the same time frame, I think was a pretty key insight for when we were looking at the applicability both in and outside of healthcare. So I just wanted to share that, because
absolutely. There are many challenges in implementing these solutions, and you can come up with the most sophisticated one. If it's not user friendly, there is no user adoption. So this is a great point. And Taylor, as you mentioned, we see that not only in healthcare but also in retail, airports, hospitality, everywhere where we implement our solution. We know that that's a common challenge from our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So here, why don't we talk about all the disgusting things that are on these?
No. Yes, we can find a lot of the studies, they focus on bacteria, but we can also find viruses and spores and all pathogens, all microorganisms can be found on those screens. If you were to actually plate that screen in a Petri dish, it doesn't look very nice. Yeah, I know, it's horrible. Some of these microorganisms are harder to kill if they are on a device. So at CleanSlate, we use a reference concept that is called hierarchy of susceptibility, where we can predict efficacy based on the pathogen structure, but also the mechanism of action of the technology or disinfectant. The concept, what it does, it just describes the descending order of susceptibility of different types of microorganisms to antimicrobial chemicals. It applies relatively well to UVC. So as you can see here on this figure, at the very bottom, we have the most susceptible microorganisms, and the very top, the hardest to kill. Those would include prions and bacterial spores. And like I said, at the bottom, the easiest to kill, those would include viruses viruses such as influenza and even SARS-CoV-2. And now COVID-19, and as we talk about SARS, COVID-19 is very much on everyone's mind. And with the current pandemic caused by SARS-CoV-2, we are seeing a growing interest in using UVC and our technology to disinfect high-touch surfaces on smaller items. It's important to remember that one of the primary routes of transmission of COVID-19 is through physical contacts, including with droplets from an infected person that are deposited on a surface and subsequently transferred to another person. Based on our studies, and I know, Taylor, you will be talking about that later, we did a few studies with coronaviruses, including SARS-CoV-2. Those will actually be published on our website today, so I do invite everyone to check it out. We found a really good efficacy rate against SARS-CoV-2, other coronaviruses, and nosocomial pathogens as well. So that's it for me, Taylor. I'll be online if there are any questions later on. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you so much, Carolina. And I want to go back to some of the results from our poll earlier. So we upwards of 70% of folks said they either never or only sanitize their device 1 to 3 times a week. Most folks, 21% of respondents said 3 to 10 times a week, and then one person said 10 plus times a week. I'm assuming that's one of our in-house engineers. And one of the things that I think this would mirror what a lot of people, and it's we would mirror with the research that we see in the field, and it really feeds into the device hygiene challenges that we see, which is, first of all, as we've said, so you have professional grade chemical disinfectants. A lot of those are not permitted under the instructions for cleaning from device manufacturers. So even during COVID-19, Apple and Samsung kind of relaxed some of their chemical cleaning guidelines. They don't allow any of the disinfectants that we were talking about earlier. That's really going to kill the dangerous stuff that you're going to see across all these different professional environments. You have staff and customers that are really hesitant to use any kind of chemical solution. I mean, think about it from their perspective, it's $1,000 piece of equipment that they own and they're liable for and that they're bringing in. And if you as a business owner are deploying, you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in mobile device programs to increase the efficiency of your business. If you have to start RMAing those within 6, 8, 12 months, and the claims aren't covered under warranty because they're using an unauthorized chemical disinfectant, that creates a pretty big challenge. And then you also have the fact that the repeated use of chemicals can actually create an occupational health and safety risk, not to mention what Carolina was talking about at the contact time. So that's a lot about the categories of the solution, but how have we actually gone about solving this? We at CleanSlate have solved this with a really simple to use UV disinfection product that in this video, back when our first generation was 30 seconds, now it's only 20 seconds. It can do 3 to 4 devices at once. And it's meant to allow someone to wash their hands, and then the door automatically opens so you can avoid recontamination. So we kind of get what Carolina, when we were talking with Carolina, where you get both sides of the coin and you're able to sanitize your hands, sanitize your device in one singular time frame, and then go about your day, whether you're going to the next to do in a biological lab, or whether you're going to catch a flight. You can now know that you are you've attained personal hygiene. And what this means for us is, the using UV light versus a chemical solution means we can do this in 20 seconds. So you don't need to do 20 seconds and then let it sit for 3 minutes afterwards. It's 20 seconds will kill 99.99% of dangerous bacteria and viruses. It's chemical free. So you don't have chemicals that are going to attack the oleophobic coating that make devices responsive and prevent them from building up grease. And we have made sure to use touch-free device removal, and then to validate all of this with true a level of efficacy that hospitals can trust. And our standard is if we can produce the most rigorously tested hospital-grade product, but make it easy enough to use that anyone in any business environment can deploy this and be proud to show it in a public-facing area, that's when you get true not only user adoption, but actual efficacy of the product. And this is a table of our standard efficacy rates. One thing that Carolina mentioned that I'm very proud to share with this group on an exclusive basis, and then we'll be publishing on our website later this afternoon, is that we have completed official testing on SARS-CoV-2, the actual virus, that netted a 99.9995%, 99.995, yes, percent kill rate of the virus in just 20 seconds, which is phenomenal. Not only is CleanSlate UV the first device hygiene company in the world to do this testing, but we're also, it also really reinforces not only our commitment to validation and making sure that we really are the market leader in terms of data and creating really enforcing hand hygiene, but it also proves that from a technological solution standpoint, the product is incredibly effective, which is obviously the most important thing right now. I'm actually going to skip over this because we're going low on time, but we have a couple of case studies, both in healthcare as well as outside healthcare. One of the most successful being at the Chile Dairy in New Zealand. Be happy to talk about this to anyone interested afterwards. And one of the things that's commonly asked about CleanSlate is where can it be placed? So it's designed to be used in high traffic areas. It's designed to be used a lot. It's made to stand up for that, and it can be put on a tabletop or on a stand. And here's an example of what that looks like in a very high traffic public environment. We've gotten a lot. This has generated a massive amount of interest at Pearson, and it's being used constantly. But they now are going to soon have 20 of these stations throughout the airport to figure out how are we making sure that people are washing their hands and sanitizing their devices as they go through to catch a flight or they come off of a flight. You also can see it on nursing stations or on countertops as you go into, you go to check in a hotel, or in this case, you go into a neonatal intensive care unit. And, one of the things I'll just say about the product very quickly is that people love it. People love using it. They find it very easy to use. They find it very easy to train people on how to use it. And that's one of the reasons that so many brands, both in healthcare and outside of healthcare, trust us. We have a fantastic roster of clients. And the reason for this is because we've been able to make a product that is easy to use. And when you compare it to the alternative, which right now is chemical disinfectants, it is not nearly as slow. It will do, you can sanitize about 6 times the number of devices in the same time frame as you'd be able to do it with a chemical disinfectant. It won't damage the devices. And ultimately, when you look at the method of disinfection, you also see that there's a lot of ancillary benefits in terms of occupational health, not having to put on gloves because people were worried about their hands wearing down from bleach exposure, all that kind of stuff. So that's the end of our, sort of more formal presentation time. We are at the 12:30 mark, and I apologize for that. So we'll stay on the line, and we'll spend a few minutes going through some questions in the Q&A. What we don't get through right now, we'll go from there. So the first question that we got is from Thomas, and he asked, how is your device able to only sanitize with a 20-second cycle? A lot of other UVC devices have longer cycle times. That's absolutely true. We actually formally received our patent on the product about 2 months ago. And the patent for our technology is around how we're able to contain, reflect, refract, and manipulate the UV light within an enclosed chamber without ever exposing the user to that. So that's part of that is due to the physics of the actual chamber. But the other part of it is to do with the fact that we actually never turn our bulbs off, and we're able to do that without ever putting the user at risk of seeing them. And that has a big impact in terms of UV bulb warm-up period. Eugene asked, what happens to plastics under UVC? I have a lumen UVC to disinfect my CPAP, and I know the plastic's turning yellow. So that is one of the only disclaimers that we have on the front of the product, is that repeated exposure to UVC light may accelerate the natural yellowing of plastics. So for instance, when you lay out, if you were to leave your AirPods case out in the sun for a week and notice they may get a bit of yellow, UVC can accelerate that process. This is only a primarily concern for white plastics. And the thing that is really, really important to note is that it doesn't create, it's a cosmetic issue, but it doesn't create functional issues in the same way that a lot of chemical disinfectants, what they will do is not only will they actually lead to discoloration, but they'll actually impact the functionality. The fibers from the wipes will get into different ports and holes and create a lot of issues. Marley has asked, does each country have to pass through their own legal test to approve it? So our product is globally certified, and we're able to sell into the vast majority of markets right now without any actual individual approvals. This is because we don't claim to clean the class 2 medical devices, and that language changes a bit based on jurisdiction. But the long and short of it is that because we are validating all of our claims with third-party lab testing, and because we're going through all the proper safety and electrical safety and UV safety certifications, we, unlike most products in the market, are not only able to sell globally, but to do so with confidence and with standards that will apply to pretty much every jurisdiction. Matthew has asked, Bharat has asked, how much is the device selling for? Frankly, I have to know where you're commenting from, and I can put you in touch with. We have fantastic partners globally, such as Peak-Ryzex, Zenith Arabia, and working in down in with Meditech and DQ Solutions in Switzerland and Costa Rica, as well as here in North America. And Marley asked, does each country have to? Oh, sorry, I already asked that. Matthew said, do you have any photos that you could share showing devices, in particular the screens that have been damaged by overuse of chemical disinfectants? That would be, very helpful to. That's a very good question. A lot of that we haven't actually explicitly asked for that from clients yet. We should start. I'm going to make that note to our team. We know that there have been so many people who've come to us with that case and saying it's either the responsiveness on the device or having the RMA devices and them not being covered under warranty because they explicitly use chemical professional grade chemicals and that kind of stuff. And Alyssa asked, how do you measure functionality pre-post UV exposure? Is it a subjective or objective judgment, and what parameters do you measure on electromechanical devices? So that's a good question. The functionality on devices is based on a couple things. So one of them is responsiveness, and we've tried to use similar tests that that device manufacturers. We've actually worked with a couple of device manufacturers to have them give its input on how we're doing some of that testing. But a lot of it has to do with how responsive the screen's being, how what the impact of things like fingerprints, because one of the functions of an oleophobic coating on a phone is that it's supposed to eliminate or reduce the impact of fingerprints and smudges on the screen, and how visible is that from regular use pre-chemical treatment versus post over a long period of time. And we've actually designed a testing device that will actually automatically it'll just keep wiping a device over and over again to simulated sort of accelerated lifetime testing. So again, we're happy. I don't want to take up too much more time because I know we're over, but happy if you want to drop us a note to absolutely dive into that. And Paul has asked, will the power settings differ by country? The product is meant to operate anywhere from a 110 to a 240 volt. Might be 230, but I believe it's 240. And again, that's part of the global certification. So it has a has a flexible power supply and flexible power systems. So the only thing that's required to change from one country to the other is the power cord itself. And other than that, it's completely flexible. So with that, I will say thank you to everyone for joining today. Thank you to Dr. Carolina Koutras for coming online and sharing some of her expertise with us and for her continued contribution to our team. Thank you to our team and partners for both supporting this webinar and then also for sharing it. And I hope that everyone else has a great day. And for our American friends, if you haven't got out and vote today, make sure you do that. And I hope that everyone has some popcorn and we can look at some results and that stuff tonight. But thank you so much for joining us. Really excited. And as always, if you want to reach out to us either via our website or at sales@cleanslateuv.com, please don't hesitate to do that. And we'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions and talk about either a free 2-week trial or any other additional info that may be helpful as part of how you're looking to solve this problem. So thank you so much. Have a fantastic day.